On a Saturday in April 2021, these 12 men signed a contract that would shock the world of football. These 12 men represented the most powerful football clubs in Europe. 6 English clubs, 3 Spanish clubs and 3 Italian clubs. And in the contract, they had agreed to break away into a new pan-European football league where they will have permanent seats and cannot be relegated. These 12 men call this new closed league the European Super League. When these 12 clubs announced to the world that they had signed a contract to form this new closed breakaway Super League, all hell broke loose. Polls showed that an overwhelming majority of football fans did not like that the biggest clubs would break away to a closed European Super League. Remarkably, even the fans of the clubs that would participate in the closed breakaway league overwhelmingly rejected this idea. Across Europe, football supporters took to the street to protest. Also, political leaders across Europe condemned the breakaway Super League, Boris Johnson going the furthest, calling the breakaway league very damaging and promising that he would stop the European Super League with the help of a legislative bomb. But the perhaps most pivotal opposition to the European Super League came from the international and European football federations, FIFA and UEFA, which immediately threatened that any player that would participate in this new breakaway European Super League would be banned from all other football competitions, including national team competitions. All of these reactions were so overwhelming that just a few days after the announcement, 9 of the breakaway teams publicly distanced themselves from the European Super League, with several of them issuing sheepish apologies for their fans. And with that, it seemed like the idea of a breakaway European Super League was dead in the water, but that was not the end of the story. 3 of the teams behind the European Super League, Real Madrid, FC Barcelona and Juventus, have not backed down from the planned breakaway league. And they like to point out that the 9 teams that have backed out still are bound by the contract signed on that fateful April Saturday. These 3 remaining clubs also doubled down on the European Super League by launching a legal campaign that at this very moment is being fought at the European Court of Justice. A legal campaign that is designed to eliminate FIFA's and UEFA's monopoly over football, and a legal campaign that could end up revolutionizing the world of football forever. This is Gianni Infantino, this is Alexander Ceferin. These 2 men run the organizations that control the world of football, FIFA and UEFA. There are some 5 billion football fans and over 300 million football players in the world. So how can we say that these 2 men, or anyone for that matter, control football? That has to do with how organized sports are, well, organized. We humans love kicking balls around. It seems like some sort of football has emerged in almost all historic human societies. But the organized football we play today didn't emerge until 19th century England. Here, players created the first organized football clubs and the first organized football leagues. This new organized football spread from England also to neighboring countries, and soon there were leagues in other countries and matches were soon played between national teams. As the popularity of football continued to grow, a hierarchy of governing bodies developed to give the sport some structure. In each country, a national football association was founded to govern the national leagues, and these in turn set up a football federation, FIFA, and later also regional confederations, including UEFA. And football is still today structured in this pyramid of governing bodies, and under this structure, football has over the last century become the world's by far most popular sport. There are today more nations connected to FIFA than there are to the United Nations. So what is it that FIFA and its regional organizations such as UEFA do? Well, they do many things, but most importantly, on behalf of its members, they 1. Protect the interests and integrity of the sport of football and its various stakeholders. 2. They organize international tournaments. And 3. They redistribute money from the international tournaments to the national leagues in so-called solidarity payments. In addition to that, and this is something that we will have reason to get back to, FIFA and UEFA impose a complete ban for clubs and players to participate in any competitions not organized by FIFA or UEFA or the national football member associations. That's why I said earlier that the organizations that these two men control, FIFA and UEFA, actually control the sport of football. There simply exists no organized football outside of their pyramid. But maybe that's about to change. This is Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the billionaire deputy prime minister of the United Arab Emirates. In 2008, he bought the football club Manchester City. This is Roman Abramovich, the Russian billionaire oligarch. In 2003, he bought the football club Chelsea. This is Mohammed bin Salman, the billionaire de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia. Last year, he bought the football club Newcastle United through the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. Football clubs have traditionally been viewed as something that belongs to the local community, and in line with that, many clubs have traditionally been owned directly by the supporters or by local businesses. In some countries, for instance Germany and in my home country Sweden, the national football associations even have so-called 50+1 rules in place, requiring that members and supporters and not companies and outside financiers control the majority of voting rights in the sports teams. But in the biggest leagues, most notably the English Premier League, there are no such rules, and all the big clubs are viewed as financial assets that are controlled not by the fans but by some of the world's wealthiest individuals and corporations. These new owners have during the last 20 years invested inordinate sums of money in their clubs, which in turn have become so powerful that the power balance within the football pyramid has started to shift. So powerful have the biggest teams become that they now question why they should accept leagues where they risk being relegated, and why they should accept that UEFA shares tournament money with poorer teams when the star players that they have bought draw the biggest audiences. That power shift is what led those 12 men to sign that European Super League contract on that fateful April Saturday. FIFA and UEFA immediately mobilized to thwart the plans of these 12 men and fired back by announcing that the players who will play in the teams that might play in the closed league will be banned from playing in the World Cup and Euros, so they will not be able to represent their national teams at any matches. Later, UEFA also imposed sanctions on the breakaway teams. And it's these threats and sanctions from FIFA and UEFA that Barcelona, Real Madrid and Juventus now are pointing to in a legal campaign that is designed to challenge FIFA's and UEFA's century-old control of football. This is Jean-Louis Dupont, a 50-something-year-old legendary Belgian sports lawyer. During the 90s, Jean-Louis revolutionized the football industry by helping the player Jean-Marc Bosman get a ruling from the EU court saying that clubs are not allowed, under EU law, to restrict the free transfer of players between European clubs. This court ruling paved the way for today's transfer sum arms race between the most powerful football clubs. When the remaining European Super League teams, Madrid, Barcelona and Juventus, through the European Super League's promoter company A22, decided that they would launch a legal campaign against FIFA and UEFA, this is the lawyer they hired, together with the global law firm Clifford Chance. I want to talk about this legal campaign a bit because it's really interesting. Shortly after FIFA and UEFA threatened to ban players who participate in the European Super League and started to impose sanctions on the breakaway teams, Jean-Louis Dupont and Clifford Chance filed a motion at the Commercial Court number 17 in Madrid. In this motion, they argued that the court immediately must prohibit FIFA and UEFA from punishing clubs and players that participate in the European Super League, arguing that such punishments do violate EU law. To make sure that different member states across the European Union aren't interpreting EU law in various conflicting ways, EU law requires that national courts refer all novel questions on how to interpret EU law to the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg for so-called preliminary rulings. And when Jean-Louis Dupont's motion landed on the Spanish court's desk, that's what the Spanish court did. It sent 6 questions to Luxembourg. So what are the questions about? Well, ultimately they're about, and to some extent all EU law is about, the internal European market. One of the core purposes of the European Union is to establish an internal European market. Why? Because it's believed that a well-functioning internal market will not only lead to growth within all EU member states, but will also prevent the member states from waging war against each other. Therefore, EU law includes a number of mechanisms to create and maintain an internal market. One such mechanism is to ensure the free movement of products, services and workers and capital between the member states. It was these rules that Jean-Louis Dupont relied on in the landmark Bosman case, the case that paved the way for today's player transfer market. Another way that the EU treaties seek to create and maintain the internal market is by so-called competition law, also called antitrust law. There are two main provisions of competition law in the treaties, Article 101 and Article 102. Article 101 says that it's illegal for companies to enter into agreements to restrict competition, essentially making cartels illegal. Article 102 says that it's illegal for dominant companies, in other words monopolies and near monopolies, to abuse their strong market positions. So if you summarize those 6 questions that the Spanish court sent to Luxembourg, they ask whether it's legal under those EU law provisions on the free movements and competition law for FIFA and UEFA to maintain a monopoly over football by punishing teams and players that participate in competitions that FIFA and UEFA have not approved. The European Court of Justice will give a final answer to these questions during 2023. But already the other week, the so-called Advocate General of the court published his non-binding advisory opinion in this case. In this opinion, the Advocate General holds that FIFA's and UEFA's use of sanctions to maintain its control of football is not illegal under EU law. Next year, we will find out if the court agrees. But the European Super League does raise also another really interesting competition law question, a question that the ongoing case at the European Court of Justice will not give an answer to. As you may recall, I mentioned that Article 101 of the EU Treaty prohibits agreements that restrict competition. And maybe you're wondering, wasn't that contract that those 12 men signed on that fateful April Saturday, that contract where they agreed to create a closed Super League, wasn't that an agreement that restricts competition? An agreement that should be illegal under Article 101? If you're wondering that, you are not alone. After the European Super League was announced, many called for the European Commission to investigate those 12 clubs and whether they had infringed Article 101. But to the disappointment of many, the European Commission quickly signaled that they do not intend to investigate that question. And despite what many think, the question whether the European Super League contract is illegal is not on trial in the current case before the European Court of Justice. This also means that the question whether the European Super League contract is illegal under Article 101 still could resurface and could be litigated somehow if the European Super League ever becomes a reality. This right here is Friends Arena. It's the arena where my football team, AIK, plays home games in the Swedish highest league, Allsvenskan. Allsvenskan is ranked as the 23rd best league in Europe. All Swedish players in Allsvenskan who perform far above average, like AIK's Alexander Isak, quickly leave Sweden on contracts with teams from better leagues. But despite Allsvenskan's quote-unquote low quality, it continues to grow in popularity each year. To me, the rising popularity of Allsvenskan shows that sports is about so much more than just elite celebrity players, massive broadcasting contracts and astronomical profits. Sports is also about tying local communities together and about promoting the values of fairness, effort and humility. So what does Allsvenskan and all of this have to do with the European Super League? In the current football pyramid, all football is connected. A poor league like Allsvenskan survives partly because of the system FIFA and UEFA has set up with solidarity payments and other mechanisms that are designed to protect all of sports on all levels, not just the most powerful teams and the most powerful league. How would the European Super League change this if it becomes reality? Well, The Super League themselves have made several statements where they claim that the closed breakaway league would distribute more money to the rest of the football pyramid than FIFA and UEFA do today. And those statements are ironic because it's the biggest clubs that now want to create the Super League that for decades have been using their power to demand reductions of UEFA's solidarity payments so that they get to keep more. And now, those same teams are breaking free from UEFA, saying that their breakaway league can give more payments than the UEFA payments that they push down. More importantly, the claim is probably also false. The Spanish top league La Liga commissioned KPMG to estimate the financial consequences of the European Super League. And in KPMG's estimate, a European Super League would reduce the value of domestic leagues by over 45%. So yes, the European Super League probably threatens the financial viability of poorer football leagues, like the league in my home country. But the European Super League does more than that. The European Super League also substitutes the ideals of democracy, openness and sporting merit for raw market capitalism. You may dislike FIFA and UEFA. They are indeed far from perfect. Also, I have criticized FIFA on this channel. But despite all of their faults, FIFA and UEFA are democratic institutions that are designed to do what's best for the sport on all levels. And as such, they need to balance interests between different stakeholders, between rich leagues and poor leagues, between big teams and small teams. And when democratic institutions do strike a balance like that between opposing interests, there will always be someone who feels that they deserve to get more. But for the biggest and most powerful stakeholders to respond to that feeling by abandoning the democratic institution altogether just because they didn't get everything they wanted, I find that just wrong. Thank you so much for watching my video about the European Super League. I had so much fun making this that it became a bit longer than I originally planned. I want to make more videos like this, and they take a lot of time to make. A lot of time goes into the research, to planning all the visuals, to shooting the footage and doing all the animations, the sound design and everything. It all takes a lot of time. And to be able to spend all of this time making these videos, I need some support from my viewers. So if you like my videos, you can support me in a few different ways. First of all, you can subscribe to my channel, you can like the video, and you can also share it with your colleagues, friends and your family. But if you really like my videos, you can also go to patreon.com/themarketexit, where you can help me out by becoming a patron. If you become a patron, you not only become part of my team and help me make more videos like this, you also get different perks that you can read more about on Patreon. Thank you again for watching this video, and I hope that I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.